listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is March 22nd, 2022, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Tuesday?
Oh, Spencer, good morning to you. Another morning record. A disclaimer at the top of the show. It is the morning. Servers have not reset yet, and it being that it is the morning, I cannot be responsible for anything happening in my brain right now. So you can start working till a little bit later in the day. So, yes, good morning to you. And here we are, a month out now from patch. And we still have some big features rolling out. A lot of stuff to look forward to. The slow burn is slow. And there's a lot of stuff still that we can't do yet and haven't been able to do as of this past reset week. But, you know, a big domino is falling this week with the chapter of the Zereth Mortis campaign coming out that unlocks Unity, which allows you to use your Covenant legendary along with another legendary of your choosing. So that's awesome. It has been not awesome waiting like a month for it, or really 3 weeks, I guess, because the first week there it was just outdoor stuff anyway. But yeah, you'll be able to unlock that this week if you're all caught up. If you're at Revered, you can buy the memory that lets you put that Unity power anywhere you want to, and at an item level of your choosing up to 291 if you can afford it. That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a great power boost for everybody playing any kind of end game. And it really it's going to change the whole complexion of like Mythic Plus and raids substantially from what we're used to over the first couple weeks. So, yeah, very, very exciting week. And one of the last big dominoes to fall. Flying was last week. This week is double legendary. So we're getting there. We got an LFR wing rolling out this week. And so really, we're looking forward to the rest of LFR opening up. And I guess the only other thing at that point is Creation Catalyst, which is still a few weeks out, and then we'll kind of have all of the features of this patch unlocked.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting today because there was a tweet that went out last night from Warcraft devs that just explained that when you log in today, given that you've done the Purpose campaign quest, which actually was the one that came out last week, you will then receive the achievement today for completing the Secrets of the First One's campaign, which then lets you get Unity, which makes me think there actually isn't a quest chain today you need to do to get Unity. I think you just unlock Unity.
Potentially, yeah, if you're caught up, yeah.
So that's exciting. And then they clarified that the Judgment sort of epilogue that takes place as far as a campaign quest goes is coming out next week. So if you're someone who's like, I want to see what happens next story-wise, you might have to wait another week. But it does mean that for those of us who are logging in right away, you might just be able to log in, go to Zereth Mortis, and you have your achievement and you can pick up your Unity, which would be really cool. And that's 265 legendary, just so everyone's clear as to what item level it is. And like Jason said, if you're already Revered, as far as reputation goes, which if you've just been doing the dailies, you should be well into Revered by now. You will be able to craft that as a legendary power on any piece of, like any slot. You'll be able to basically go in and go, hey, I want to put Unity on my helm because then it gets an auto socket. It has the best stat profile, and I have my other 4 tier pieces or whatever it is you're doing, and you put that on your helm, and then you're able to have a 291 helm with Unity on it, which is pretty cool. So depending on where you're at, that's certainly something to do. I know I went out and picked up 3 different base items yesterday off of the auction house because I'm going to be crafting lots of legendaries today. Since I'm raiding main spec as both Resto and Boomkin, it means that I have to do different things for different specs as far as which legendaries go where, and because legendaries are limited to 2 slots, it means like something might be really good for Helm for Resto, but then Belt for Unity, but then when it comes to balance, I want to do like Helm for Unity, but then Boots for Ring for balance, like that kind of situation. And then I'm doing PvP on top of that, and then that's more Legos if I want. It's double ring if that's what I'm doing for. So yeah, there's a lot going on. I'm going to be spending a bunch of cosmic flux today. That's for sure. When it comes to all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the combo changes up the calculus for a lot of different specs. Like if you in a world of one legendary, one thing might be better, but then you need to switch your complementary legendary to your your Covenant Legendary, or if your Covenant Legendary is already your best, then you got to slot something else in.
Yeah.
I spent a big chunk of time the last couple of weeks just furiously crafting Shadowghast ingots. Luckily, a bunch of people from Guild chipped in and sent me a ton of metal they had lying around. I also dipped into the Guild coffers to just buy stuff, because on my server it's not really viable to just like buy base items. They're just way too expensive. The market is way too small. And so my raiders are not going to be able to afford to just straight up like buy completed rank 7 items. But once you have the skills, it's not that terrible even to buy the mats off the auction house to get it created. So, I came into this patch with, I think, legs and hands were the 2 plate slots that I knew they weren't really going to do us much good. And we didn't have anybody else really making blacksmithing pieces at a high level at this point. So I had to just skill up waist and boots all the way up. So it's been a lot of standing at the forge, just hammering away. But now we're in good shape. At least the plate wearers we can get taken care of for Unity to craft a custom Unity at 291, get a rank 7 elsewhere. It's cool. It's something we've been looking for since the expansion came out. We knew we got legendaries obviously like right away, and it was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could have 2? And it's not exactly what maybe we had in mind at the outset, but it's still going to be a nice power spike.
Yeah, what stands out to me is just the feeling of accomplishment when you finish finally ranking up that system. It's so
what a relief!
It's so cost prohibitive and so mat prohibitive as far as needing so many mats to do it. You when you finally achieve the ability to craft the rank 4s, you're like, yes, it feels great. I could do this. And then you're like, oh, the whiplash of how much I just spent doing this.
And then you're like, I could make a rank 4. Oh, I'm out of mats. Now I need more mats to make a rank, to get the rank 4 to make it a rank 4 plus 3.
Yeah.
Oh, I need even more mats to make it a plus 3. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Off I go.
Yeah. And some of them are limited and some of them are expensive. And it is quite the process. So I would just recommend that if you are logging in today and you're like, hey, I want to get my 291s, find a crafter and try and find the mats to do it with, as opposed to buying something straight off the auction house. You can probably save yourself 30% or more on the cost of that, because the markups are going to be very high.
Yeah. I know. Make sure you tip them.
I was watching the market yesterday, and I watched the base pieces go from about 50K a pop to suddenly like climb up to that 80 by mid-evening to like 120 by the time I was going to bed. And you're like, yeah, this morning they're probably going to be 200,000 gold per piece or whatever, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, if you don't have your base piece right now, like prior to reset, probably just wait. Either find a crafter or just wait, because they're going to crest and collapse probably.
Yeah, in the next 2 days. The next 2 days they'll collapse again down price wise. So just keep that in mind and focus on that. All right, this past week in World of Warcraft, because I did my little journal thing again like I did last week. We got good feedback. People enjoyed me going a little bit more into depth into what I was doing. Just some notes I wanted to include. And so first and foremost, main quest chain rewards, pretty disappointing. 226 item level, like, just feels very weak. I don't know why that was the decision that was made when it came to main quest rewards, but it feels like that was like a forgotten piece of the puzzle. I'm now up to getting 249 pieces from just doing daily quests. It feels like main quest rewards should have a fairly prominent, like a 252 eye level piece that most people are like, oh, hey, this would actually help me get into normal raid kind of idea type of gear for main quest reward chains. So I would like to see them look at that a bit, or at least going forward in future content go, yeah, let's make main quest rewards actually feel rewarding versus like, hey, this is worse than like a green or a blue I pick up off the ground kind of idea.
Well, it's weird too, because just give us gold at that point, because you have a vendor that just sells 226s for every slot for a nominal amount of anima. Seeding that kind of stuff in a quest is just weird. There's so much better gear in Zereth Mortis everywhere. Just pay out some gold out of the quest then, if you're not going to give a good item. Yeah.
And this last week was, as you mentioned, when flying came out. I don't know about yourself, but I found that flying quest chain really obscure to try and actually complete. What was funny was earlier in the episode last week, I was actually chatting about how I found this place out in northwestern area of the Sands, where you could like earn up cosmic energy and then spend it to teleport around and unlock all these teleports. Yeah. Well, guess what? That's used in the flying quest. I wasn't aware of that when I was doing it previously, but kind of hilarious. It's also hilarious that they, to me, I found it very funny that they make an area like that part of the flying quest chain, where flying makes that entire thing entirely easy and obsolete because you can just fly up to all the different platforms. So just an odd choice there, but no, I actually got lost. I lost the thread in that quest chain. I had to go to Wowhead and look up the entire quest chain and go, where did I not get a quest? Because my Pokepoke, who gives you all your quests, didn't queue up basically to give me the next quest. I completed a quest, and then there was just nothing. And so I basically left the area and flew around for a bit while I looked up this quest chain and where I sort of lost the thread. And then when I flew back and resummoned Pokepoke, suddenly there was the quest. And I was like, okay, this is what was going on. But yeah, it was
weird.
A little weird.
I did not have that experience, but I mean, Pokepoke is a little twitchy.
He is.
Pokepoke does some weird stuff sometimes. So I'm not surprised that if it was going to break anywhere, it would break because of that.
Yeah. We ended up having probably our best raid night ever last week that we've done, at least for this chunk of content. We cleared 10 of 11 normal and heroic in one night, which was crazy. So we just stomped through it.
How long of a night was that?
3 hours, man. We just stomped it.
That's a lot of bosses.
It was a lot of bosses. It was actually, to be fully clear, it was actually 16 bosses. It wasn't 20 bosses. Because we have a lockout. This is one of those little sneaky mythic tricks for people. We have a lockout for normal that is just the tier bosses, and then like one other boss that has a good weapon or something like that. And so every week when we go in, we can go and do just those bosses and not have to worry about any of the others because they're already dead inside of the instance lockout that we have. So our normal lockout is very easy to clear to just get that tier gear, and then our heroic lockout, obviously we clear the whole thing. Although I know this week we are now looking at, hey, who actually needs heroic upgrades still, and off of which bosses, because we're getting to that point where we're looking at doing the same thing for heroic. We do it a heroic and normal, it would only be 10 or 12 bosses, and then we'd be right back into mythic again. Mythic wise, we're three now of 11. We got what my raid team cleverly calls DeSausage down, which is Desaudnier.
That's what everybody calls it, but I don't get that because it doesn't line up for me. I don't get why that's what we've decided that boss is called.
I agree with you.
I'm actively rejecting it. I'm like not going with the flow on that. I don't like it.
That's fine. I don't appreciate it either. But
I'm on team. Say it like it's spelled, not what you want it to be, which is not what it is.
Yes. Now, is it Desaigné? Is that what you say?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be French or if it's supposed to be Dausegni because it's like a alien language, right? They're like, so I don't know. I don't know if it's supposed to be just straight up like English phonetic or if it's supposed to be like it kind of looks like French kind of.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure. I haven't caught it anywhere in like spoken dialogue if it's spoken anywhere.
Well, we got Dausegni down. And then went to go work on Zymox and got Zymox to like sub 20%. So Zymox is dead the next time we see Zymox.
Nice. Which
was great. So yeah, overall, strong week. We kind of wanted to finish out 4 of 11. So it was too bad we didn't get more time on Zymox. We spent a little bit more time on Dausegni than we wanted. But overall, we were pretty happy with that. How about you for your raid? How did you guys do?
So raid was pretty good. I mean, we actually re-cleared everything we had previously killed by the end of Wednesday. So that's 7 of 8 normal and 2 the first 2 mythic, Skolex being the second one. So that was pretty good doing that tidily. We spent a lot of time on heroic Dausegni. We got pretty close, but we didn't have time to kill it. And then unfortunately we didn't get back to it. We spent all of Sunday on normal Anduin, which we did like it was legit prog even on normal, even after the nerfs, just because it's a complex fight. There's a lot of different stuff that happens in it. So I was hoping we could get both heroic Dausegni and normal Anduin, but the timing didn't work out that way. But we should be set up for a heroic kill this week. The Anduin fight's really cool. I hadn't seen it before. The first time that they attempted it, I was not present, and then we kind of held off last week because the fight was getting significantly nerfed over and over again, and we're like, okay, let's wait to put any time into it until we see, when the nerfs kind of slow down. And as it turns out, they kind of haven't.
They haven't. They're still going. A little bit. We had some fresh ones yesterday. Yeah.
Still just nerfing that fight. But I actually really liked that fight. I was a little bit concerned that it wasn't going to feel good to do. But the dance is pretty telegraphed. It's very predictable. So it kind of, I feel like it's fair, what it asks you to do is fair. It does sort of feel like a mini end boss at the, 2/3 of the way through the raid, because in terms of its complexity and everything like that, and it tells kind of a cool story as you go through it. So yeah, I was pretty impressed with that fight, actually. I think, most of the fights leading up to it are fine. They're decent fights. They're cool, but they don't leave a huge impression on me in terms of like, the gameplay or like solving the puzzle. They're just raid bosses, which I have no complaints about. I really don't mind like relatively simple fights. But I think that, like, Anduin was a way that they could do sort of an epic fight, tell a cool story, have some cool mechanics without it being 13 minutes long and like incredibly punishing. So yeah, that's kind of more what I want to see. Like, it's obviously not 1-to-1 because Anduin is not the last boss of the raid, but if you compare it to something like the Sylvanas fight where they tried to tell a story and make it really epic, like the fight was a slog. Even when you had it on farm, it never felt good. It's just a marathon. And I'm sure we'll get there in this raid, but I think there are opportunities where you can have these sort of like almost cinematic moments like inside of a raid fight and not have it be this slog that just feels bad to do. The other thing I like about Anduin is they kind of introduce one new mechanic to really pay attention to per phase, and you have sort of a baseline rotation around the fight, which is awesome because it sort of teaches you what to expect, and then there's one thing to focus on. Unlike a Sylvanas type fight where you have 3 separate phases where it's essentially a completely different toolkit in each phase. There's a ton of stuff thrown at you to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the design of that fight is really cool, and it was fun to do. I'm hoping maybe this week we can get it with a bigger group, get some more people in there, and more shots at people getting tier bonuses and stuff. So yeah, looking forward to this week. I think cleanup's going to go a lot smoother, and we'll be set up for some good progression.
Good. Yeah, no, fights like Sylvanas that have those very, very different phases, you basically prog each individual phase, which feels very, very clunky sometimes, or at least feels a bit more like a slog than having a fight like Anduin, where yes, there's added complexities to the original content that you did inside phase 1. Like phase 3 has phase 1 plus all of this stuff. And that's great because you then have learned phase 1. And so now when you add phase 3, you're only learning 1 or 2 new mechanics as opposed to an entirely different toolkit that you have to sort of come up with. And so I appreciate fights that build like that as opposed to reset every single phase. Or have phases that just don't make sense, like the dancing phase inside the Ashara fight, where it was like, does everyone suddenly go ahead and dance? And you're like, why? What is the... Okay, sure. This doesn't tie into anything
from the rest of the fight. Like
exactly,
it sort of fit the like aristocratic vibe of like Queen Ashara and the royal court and all that. But like, it was not like a really good feeling raid mechanic in my opinion. There was cool elements to that fight. It was certainly epic, but I think that was an example of it's like especially a mid expansion raid. It's like I think that boss was sort of the turning point for a lot of casual raiders. Like, this is just not what I want to be doing with my time anymore.
Yeah, I get that. Okay. As far as the rest of my week went, I obviously have to do my PvP recap still. But before that, I want to talk M+. I did a lot of M+ last week. I sort of made it my mission to get my IQD last week, as well as try to get my Changeling. And I got both of them after many, many, many M+. The nicest thing about the upgrade system on trinkets is once you get your sort of, once I get my sort of 8 done for the week that are 15 or above, or it means that I'm going to guarantee to get my max rewards. You just take any IQD queue you can get, any DOS you can get. It's like, all right, this DOS +3, we're doing it. Let's just try and get a, I will drag this group through this if I need to make sure that we just get it to drop. So I did manage to get it to drop. I actually got to drop off 14, which meant that I ended up with the highest item level reward, the 262, which I could then upgrade to 272, because I actually had enough Valor to do it, because I've been banking my Valor all this time. And then a similar thing happened with my Changeling, so I got that to drop, and that went up to 268, because I was 1 upgrade away based off Valor caps. So this week, that'll go, the first chunk of Valor I earn will go into upgrading Changeling to max level, provided I don't get one from my vault, which I still have to check, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, the pugging thing in M+ is still a bit of a rough experience. There's still a lot of people figuring out how to do dungeons well. And the biggest thing I learned this past week is where WoW skips are like super powerful. DOS being, because I ran it the most, being one that actually you can take huge advantage of WoW. In that dungeon, the very first pack you pull, if you kill WoW on that pack, you can take that WoW buff, if you kill it last, like as the last mob you kill, and run to Hakar. You can run right to Hakar, like through all the trash, through that whole thing, right to Hakar, pop Heroism, so it's on cooldown in the first 3 minutes of the dungeon, and blow up Hakar, which feels great to do. And then you work your way back out through the trash. And as soon as you kill the trash pack at the bottom of the Hakar, the ramp that leads into the Hakar area, you can kill a WoW there and take that WoW all the way to the next essential WoW pack that would be inside of Mechagon, right before the like ooze slimes that you have to cross. You can take a WoW to that one, kill WoW there, and take that WoW all the way to the boss. And then again, you're in a situation where you then clear trash on the way out. And you've gotten 2 bosses out of the way very quickly, and it feels really good. So there's a lot of WoW skips that are pretty cool to do, and so I'm interested to see how that evolves throughout the season. Because at first I was like, everyone just takes all the time because this is clearly the strongest one, which it still is the strongest buff for your group. But when you can figure out where these skips work well with WoW, it suddenly becomes a really neat, interesting thing. Also, a tip for you druids: Savage Roar stacks with WoW. So if you guys get a WoW buff and you're running somewhere, just Savage Roar, because you will have ridiculous speed for that period of time, which I think is hilarious. And you can just truck through stuff.
It's ludicrous speed.
Ludicrous speed, yes.
It's like you're going to Plaid.
That's right.
Yeah. I agree. Like, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with WoW, but in general, like Ur's like the default best choice. And then, you do have situations where, like, if you've already kind of bricked the timer and you're getting bonus relics, Vi is kind of nice to start off like a boss pull with into an or something. So
yeah.
They've bug fixed the relics out a lot. That's kind of nice. It's it's coming along. I think I still don't love the affix, but at least it's functioning better now. And also the thing where when you kill a relic, then the other 2 go away. That helps a lot. It just makes everything less confusing. Way fewer plates on your screen. So that's good. I mean, the first couple weeks it was like, this affix is a mess, and a lot of times the relics don't even behave properly. So seeing that cleaned up a bit, I had a pretty good week out there. I got my first 15 in time.
Nice.
But unfortunately this week, like, my all-star Resto Druid M+ buddy and my all-star Havoc DH M+ buddy were both on vacation, not together. It wasn't like a joint trip. They just both happened to be like traveling last week, and last week was like the easiest week we've seen so far. So it was kind of unfortunate, because if we had the whole squad together, I think we would have gotten a lot more done. But one step at a time. It's still early in the season. My rating's only like 1,200 because all I'm really doing is just trying to get 15s in, and I kind of take whoever I can go with, because I've had these attendance concerns with the guys I usually run with. So but still, we're definitely sort of curving out into where 15s are supposed to be, I think. So that's great, because that's how we get started here.
Yeah, it's one of those important notes of, at some point you do need to start actually building rating up to be able to upgrade things. I ran into that this week of when I wanted to upgrade those items to max level. I actually had to get above. I had to get the 1850 achievement, the Keystone Conqueror achievement, to be able to actually upgrade them that high. I'm now up to like 2150 kind of rating after running a ton of keys this past week. Like, that was like one of the major activities I did. But I will make a note that Streets, which continues to see nerfs, is still a lot of fun to do, but way too difficult trash-wise. Like, it's still, you are hitting a brick. You are still in a situation where pulling more than one pack is extremely dangerous to do. And Mythic Plus often encourages you to go as fast as possible, which requires you to pull more than one pack. And it's very odd to be like, okay, we're going to pull this one mob with its one friend and kill these 2 because they're very challenging. And then we'll pull these 3 mobs and kill just those 3 because they're very challenging. It's a weird situation to still sort of be in with that dungeon. So I think the trash still needs some tuning, but Streets is still really fun if you guys haven't dived into some Tazovesh stuff. Those bosses, to me, are still some of the best Mythic Plus bosses out there to do. And then even better than that is Gambit. I did a bunch of Soleil's Gambits last week. Oh my goodness, those bosses are great. They are super fun. You start off in that Murloc area, and you sort of can either, once again, you can drop down to your left, kill a woe, and run right to the boss and put heroism on cooldown if you want. Very cool thing to do if that's something you want to do. I like that a lot as a strat. And you can come back and kill the Murlocs later. You can literally do the Murlocs last if you want. You can clear the whole dungeon and then come back and just clear out the rest of your trash percentage and Murlocs at the very end. But go to that first boss with the, like, it's got the rune puzzle where you have to have the orbs, and the orbs have to go to the particular pillars to stop the expanding circle of death from the center of the room. And you have to kill the ads and, sort of run away from a beam. Still, like, one of the weaker mechanical bosses that are in there, but still requires a lot of communication. It was funny, I was pugging that dungeon, and you have to be able to communicate with your group which orbs go where based off of the console. And what I started doing is I would click the console and then type inside party chat a line that was just the top two, and then hit enter, and then a line that was the bottom two. So inside the chat box, it looked like front left is blue, front right is purple, back left is orange, back left is yellow or whatever, or green. That worked really well inside a pug where we weren't communicating at all. So that's sort of what I'd recommend to a lot of people, is just lay it out that way inside chat. So when you look at the chat box and you look at the room, you're like, this is where the orbs go. Because that worked really well. Then you have the dragon boss still with, like, the tail hook and the, like, calling in ads, and you have to point the breath towards the ads to kill the ads. Very cool boss. Then of course the last boss is like two bosses in one big epic encounter, and just having those three bosses as the only three bosses I think works for the space. So Gambit, a lot of fun. If you haven't tried out the Tazovesh stuff, even if you're just doing a lower keystone to sort of start seeing it, it's worth doing. I like those their bosses are much better than the other bosses in M+. They're just, you can tell they put a lot of work into them.
Yeah, I actually haven't done those yet, but part of that is because I don't know them, and we haven't had as many opportunities to run with our set team as we usually do. So I would, I'd rather do known quantities when I have unknown quantities in terms of the people we're running with. So I haven't actually stepped into either. They're the only two I haven't done it all yet this season.
Yeah, well, they're worth doing when you can. And yeah, I agree. Like I held off on doing them the first time through until I had a group of at least 3 or 4 guildies to sort of be like, okay, we got some forgiveness here for me not really knowing what's going on. And we can sort of help each other through this, which I think helps a lot. So yeah, I would recommend, if you can go with a few people you're probably going to have a better experience, especially if you can have them in voice with them able to sort of communicate with you what's going on. So yeah, definitely check that out. All right, PvP-wise. PvP-wise this week, back to the RBGs. I actually did a little bit of threes this week too, just for fun as Boomkin, which was a lot of fun actually. Enjoyed it quite a bit. But yes, I was doing RBGs. I got my Vicious Warcroaker. That is the mount that you earn for doing rated PvP this season. And then you start earning belts after that. Warcroaker is a little weird to ride around on because it looks like it moves really slowly, but it's not. It's moving at normal mount speed. It's just the animation of it hopping is a very large animation. It's cool. I got another saddle. I bought the War Basilisk with that saddle, and so I'm slowly collecting up all of the mounts that I haven't gotten yet. I just like the really unique ones. The Basilisk, there's not a lot of Basilisk mounts out there, and this one's just a cool one to look at for sure. I hit Challenger 2, which means I can now have that upgrade on all of my gear. So all of the PvP gear that I got, I can then upgrade, which is great. And that put me at about 270 PvPI level, which is kind of crazy because PvPI level scales so hard. And I want to emphasize PvPI level scales so hard in a different way too. PvP gear from your vault, which can roll tier, scales. So you can get tier gear that scales. This is not something I'd thought of until this week when people started looting tier gear out of their vaults. And it was like, yes, this tier piece scales to 275 eye level because it's, PvP gear. And that's at like 262. It scales up to 275 eye level. And so when you get those pieces up to max, when you max them out as PvP, when you're a 2400 rated PvP player with tier gear you've looted from your vault, you're going to have your whole set's going to be like 290 eye level. It's going to be insane. You're going to have like 130,000 hit points. It's going to be nuts seeing some of this stuff later in the season in PvP. So that was a thing I hadn't considered is, looting tier gear from that PvP vault then scales as PvP gear, which is super, super strong. So definitely a factor for those of you who like PvP out there. Look to try and get the tier gear pieces out of there, because even if you get them at a low item level now because you're not rated very high, they will scale as you scale throughout this season, which is pretty neat to check out. Still, we're all over the place. It's still a mixed bag of cats when it comes to rating and who we're facing inside PvP. At 1550 eye level for team rating, I was at 1625. The team was at about 1550 average. We faced off against a 2300 team.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that was a full pre-made off the same server that people recognized. People recognized people who were in as like, these are like an actual esports team that does RBG kind of stuff. Like, they were out of Korea. They're like a very serious team. We didn't kill a single member of their team. We could not kill a single person. Like, we would catch a
not
warlock.
Even a feather in your cap for that one.
We literally, like, they just destroyed. I think at least it was fun. Like, they, like, right off the bat, you come in, you're like, oh wow, it's a 2300 team. This is like a professional pre-made team. We aren't going to beat this team, right? And the other opposite team obviously knows what, like, they're not going to gain any rating out of this match. Like, it's just like, whatever, we're having a good time. We're honor capping for the week, I'm sure is what they were doing. They had a good time with us too. Like, it was nothing mean. It was very much playful, and you could tell that everyone was just trying to have a good time, because we weren't going to lose any rating. They weren't going to gain any rating. And it was just one of those silly, I guess, glitches in the system that happens, or there was just very little option. Maybe they've been waiting in queue for 30 minutes, and so it finally was just like, here, take a team to play against.
Yeah, at some point they got to match them with somebody, right?
Exactly. So that was kind of hilarious of an experience to, like, not, like, literally have our entire team wailing on one individual with CCs going out on healers when he just couldn't accomplish a kill. Like, they were just so strong. And then last night I had a very, very weird experience. AWC was this past weekend. And so we had our own little AWC experience last night, where we were queuing up, sort of, you know, we're a mishmash group of people we pulled together from trade chat, basically. And we queued into Supatees and Venruki running an RPG group against us. And we actually almost won. We were about a 50 to 60 point spread between us. So we were pushing back pretty hard and having a good fight. But that was kind of hilarious to have AWC sort of wrap up over the weekend. And I guess I know Venruki said he was capping his 4th character on Vault stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. So Venruki was playing Demon Hunter, and then Supatees was on his Boomkin main. And he was playing around with Necrotic. He was playing, sorry, not Necrotic, with Necrolord Boomkin, just trying to spread dots as far as possible and get a really big number, which we denied him the ability to do, which felt good.
There you go. Small victories.
That's right, the small victories. But yeah, it's always neat to see recognizable names and faces from the community around when you're doing stuff like that. But that was a surprise when you queue in. You're like, that's actually super. Like, that's the real Supatees. That's not like someone's fake thing. Right. That's actually him. So that was funny. So that was sort of my PvP thing for this past week. Overall, I sort of go up and down in rating, but I'm getting better. That's the neatest thing to me, was queuing into 3s and realizing that I've learned a lot of lessons from doing RBGs in how to interact inside a PvP encounter, and sort of what that gut instinct or reflex is, and got better at doing my arenas because of it. So that was kind of neat to do as well. So yeah. And then last but not least, the only other things I did was specific M+ dungeons to get 265 conduits. I know that my Frenzied Regen conduit, things like that, came from M+'s I didn't really run. And so those I ran specifically just to get the conduits, which felt good to sort of get them done and out of the way and checked off the list. And then last but not least was Trialstyle. Trialstyle is still going. It's wrapping up shortly. But it is a event that did not have any new gear this year around, but last year it did. And last year I didn't end up doing it, I guess just for whatever reason. And so I went in, I got all of the boots that you can collect. The searing and freezing boots from last year were the particular ones I wanted. They basically look like either fiery clogs or frozen clogs is what they kind of look like on your feet.
Yeah, they're like booties. They look like galoshes kind of on certain models. Yeah,
so it's they're worthwhile picking up if you can. Super easy to get all of the boots. I just got second place twice, and that was more than enough tokens to buy all the boots from last year. So if you're someone who hasn't picked those up, and you're looking to spend 30 minutes or 20 minutes doing something, you can easily do a couple trial styles and get that knocked out of the way. And then just remember, it's free transmog week too if you're someone who wants to do transmog stuff. Okay, Jason, let's dive into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft, because later in the show we got raid bosses to talk about too.
We do, yeah. A lot of stuff happening this week.
Indeed. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Warlords of Draenor Time Walking event, meaning the sign of Iron is up, where Warlords of Draenor reputation gains from combat and quests is increased by 50%, and there's time walking versions of dungeons for level 50 and above characters for Auchindoun, Bloodmaw Slag Mines, Everbloom, Grimrail Depot, Shadowmoon Burial Grounds, and Skyreach. And these, of course, drop 210 eye-level gear, and there's, of course, a time walking vendor for 207. I don't know why the time walking vendor gear isn't getting updated to being higher item level stuff, but that's a thing to keep in mind. But running 5 of these gets you that cache of normal sepulcher gear. I almost
don't make me get the buzzer. Don't make me get the buzzer.
Sofo gear drops normal Sofo gear. So be sure that you pick up your Sofo gear from doing your 5 time walkings. If you're someone who's still trying to get tier gear, that is certainly something that, or even just good trinkets. It's certainly something that's worth trying for. So.
I think this is more or less mandatory for most players still, even raiders and whatnot. I mean, you probably need something that can drop out of the raid box. So doing some time walkings is not a big ask, I don't feel like. I mean, it's going to take you a little bit of time, but they're pretty easy. And these dungeons are pretty cool. I mean, you say what you want about Warlords, but the dungeon design was good. So, this is a cool event and good timing. We always like to see these early on in the season when we still need stuff out of the raid at any item level possible.
Yeah. All right, we got Valinor, the Light of the Eons, big Colossus up in Bastion. If you're looking to knock out that world boss, you get 500 anima, as well as some memories. Jason, which memories is Valinor dropping for us, the Light of the Eons?
Well, he's the super good guy world boss, right? So you got Archbishop Benedictus for priests, you got Final Verdict for paladins, and Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence for shaman. So if you have a priest, a paladin, or a shaman, and you don't know all of your memories, make sure you go do Valinor this week and check one off the list. Yeah,
and also remember you can pick up those memories in a variety of different ways now from the different books that you can buy that learn you a random legendary memory in case you don't have one, so you can get those with a bunch of different currencies that are out there. So be sure you're looking around at your rep vendors and whatnot if you're trying to pick those up. There's some inside Korthia, and there's some out on your normal rep vendors for what are those little marks you get from the conduit, the anima conductor, that thing.
Oh man, what are they called?
You can pick those up too.
Yeah, you get them from dailies. You get them from calling sometimes too.
Yeah.
Grateful offerings.
There you go, grateful offerings.
What we're trying to, or what we're looking for. Yeah, grateful offerings. That's a really good way to do it because they're simple to get. Like they're somewhat plentiful, and there's really not much else to do with them beyond a certain point. So that's a really good thing to do to grab memories if you need to buy them off the vendor.
Yeah, I could almost say you could probably get a memory a day once you sort of have your anima conductor online and going, just based off the amount of offerings you can get. All right, Morgeth, still the big Mossborn in Desmond is up there to knock out and kill. It also drops the adaptive armor fragment and condensed atmosphere conduits, if those conduits are something you're looking for. Some 233 gear, and of course 500 more anima. And then Antros, that big Guardian construct in Zereth Mortis, the latest and greatest world boss, dropping I guess all the world bosses technically drop it now that this is out, but it drops the alpaca soul shape form, if that's one you're looking for. You want to run around as a goofy alpaca, which has one of the best jumps animations in the game. If you haven't checked it out, it's kind of hilarious. So be sure you pick that up. It looks
painful. I mean, it is hilarious, but those poor alpaca, that can't be good for them.
They must
be murder on their lower backs. So something weird's going on there.
But also drops level 259 gear. So the cloth legs and helm, leather feet and chest, mail, waist and wrist, and plate, helm, and chest. So if you're looking for any 259 gear, be sure you're knocking out Antros. And as well, keep in mind that's 20% towards your weekly. So be sure you pick up your weekly quest in Zereth Mortis before going out and killing the world boss. So you get 20% towards your completion just from that world boss alone. For the week, the Patterns Within Patterns quest, that weekly quest I just mentioned, is in Zereth Mortis. Be sure you pick that up and you're knocking that out. The New Deal, that quest, the PvP War Mode quest, you pick that up before you go to Zereth Mortis. You pick that up inside of Oribos. And you then just turn on War Mode from Stormwind or Orgrimmar, and then you head into Zereth Mortis, and you are able to complete that quest, which gets you a free trinket, one of 4 different trinket options for the new trinkets that had come out for PvP. I think this is now the third. I think this is the last week. It might be the last week for the new trinket. Other than you then get a different reward. So be sure that you're knocking that out. And outside of that, we have Mythic Plus affixes for the week. So we got Fortified, Inspiring, and Grievous, meaning non-boss enemies have 20% more health and inflict 30% increased damage. Some non-boss enemies have an Inspiring Presence that strengthens their allies, and injured players suffer increasing damage until healed. Overall, not the best week, but not the worst week. Inspiring Fortified is really gross to have together in combination. Keep in mind that you can CC the Inspiring ad and drag other ads away from it, meaning that you can, interrupt and destroy them while the Inspiring ad's aura is not reaching them. Or you can just focus down that Inspiring ad and kill it first. But Fortified Inspiring is always kind of gross in combination together. Inspiring Grievous also kind of gross together because a lot of mobs do cast like a AoE Frostbolt that hits your whole group, something like that. Inspiring, making it so you cannot interrupt these casts, makes it very dangerous, which then sets your whole group lower, which then means that Grievous then ticks on more targets, which is harder to sort of heal through. Fortified also means that everything inside the dungeon, including those AoEs, are hitting you harder, which means that Grievous is going to then be more likely to be active. Remember that healing yourself or healing another player does remove a stack of Grievous, because Grievous stacks up to 4 times. So definitely take advantage of throwing some heals around just to remove any kind of direct healing. Removes a stack of Grievous and sort of helps your healer out and helps top some people off. So that's great. Definitely focus on that. But like I said, it's a sloggy, gross kind of trash week, but this isn't like something that's going to really hinder your group throughout a lot of dungeons. I would say Streets, just right off the bat, is going to really suck because it's Fortified, Inspiring, Grievous, Streets, which means that these ads are going to have even more health than they already do, and it's already very punishing. There's a lot of CC that you need to do to sort of interrupt important casts on these mobs, and obviously Grievous just makes everyone take more damage, which makes it more dangerous. So I think Streets is kind of like off the table for a big push this week, but when it comes to a lot of these other dungeons, I think they're going to be very doable. You just have to be really safe when it comes to how you're dealing with these Inspiring mobs and helping out your healers with Grievous.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty bad week for sure. It just is. You say it's not the worst week, and I maybe agree with you, but I don't have the full combo list in front of me. It's got to be like top 3. This is a bad trash week.
Fair.
Like, it makes like something like Spires of Ascension is going to be terrible. Like, the only good thing here is though, like, if your concern is completing a dungeon, this is not super punishing for bosses, right? Like, Grievous can be a problem with bosses that have big AoEs or something, or like random damage going out, but they're not tyrannical bosses. They will be like easy enough to kill in terms of their just raw numbers, right? Like their health and stuff. So when you kill trash, it stays dead. So even if you wipe on a trash pack because the Inspiring Fort Grievous got out of control, anything that you killed is still going to be dead. And you can come back and clean it up. You're not going to have a thing where it's like, well, we don't have the juice to kill this boss. We got to just, turn around and take our ball and go home. And that's the worst feeling in any Mythic Plus. So you could probably duck that this week, which is the important thing early in the season when your big concerns are probably just completing the dungeon, getting max reward knocked out, getting set up for next week, etc. I think certainly keys will be timeable for many groups and in many dungeons, but there are going to be some dungeons are going to be a lot worse than others. It's a mixed bag this week for sure. But after last week was pretty easy, but I also don't mind the Tyrannical rotation. Tyrannical always feels pretty bad early in the season because the bosses just feel like they take an eternity.
Yeah. I think probably my worst week, because since we talked about this not being like probably top 3, probably my worst is probably Tyrannical Bolstering Explosive is pretty far up there. That's not a great week. There's a few other bad ones.
Explosive can really complicate stuff that should be easy because, certain targets that pop explosives that you don't think they would, you have to react to, and it ruins your whole just your whole rhythm.
Well, and bolstering explosive means you want to keep a lot of mobs alive for a long time, which then means that you're gonna have more orbs for longer, which splits damage farther. And then tyrannical just means bosses are really hard. Like it's that's one of the uglier weeks for me. But this week is I'm with you. It's probably top 3 in the ugly week factor when it comes to that kind of stuff. All right. PvP brawls for this week, we got Packed House, which just means they've packed more PvP inside your PvP. It means that you have that 15 versus 15 arena battles going on. It's kind of craziness. It's shenanigans. This is probably one I would sort of have hilarity and hop into as a Necrolord Boomkin and just dot everybody and watch everyone rot, because it's one of those like, it's 15 on 15. Why not see what this does? There's something different quest you get from this. We get some Marks of Honor, Conquest and Honor. This is a great way to earn a bunch of honor really quickly, because these are very fast. Typically they're over in like the first 3 minutes, because people just start, one team just leans on the other team a little bit harder, and then that's all she wrote. So if you want to get some fun silliness in with PvP, try out some Packed House this week for your 15 on 15 arena battles.
Yeah, super fun. And I would say 3 minutes is a really long one. So, yeah, really fast games. You don't really need to know what you're doing if you want to just queue it and have a good time. Like Packed House it's super wacky mode. It's fun. If you've never done it, you should check it out, even if you're not an arena player.
Yeah. Trialstyle, like I said, still going on. Ends on the 24th. So if you haven't gotten in there and checked it out yet, definitely check it out. Okay, Mage Tower. This is a blue post that came out. This is a big deal. We've sort of advocated for this for a while, so we're glad it's happening. Basically, Mage Tower is coming back this week, and it's coming back permanently. When they originally developed the Legion Time Walking bonus event, they were looking forward to features that they could add, and obviously Time Worn Keystones and the Mage Tower were part of that. Having heard the feedback and seen how it played out, they agree that a personal skill challenge being available for a short window of time every few months isn't in the spirit of these types of events. As such, starting on the week of the 29th, so it's not this week, it's next week, the Mage Tower will be accessible at any time, and it's no longer tied to the Legion Time Walking bonus event. This is great. This to me is like the Chromie event that was sort of going on. You could sort of go and do Chromie stuff. That was a lot of fun. I like that they bring back these sorts of events and start leaving them in. I was just talking to someone the other day about the post office event, about how you get your little whistle to get your mailbox. That's an event that's in the game that I think is really fun. So why not throw, Mage Tower in here as something that people can go and do whenever they want? I think that's a really perfect move. So I understand that they put it in initially just to see what it would be like as part of the Time Walking event. Jason and I are both advocates for Time Walking being a weekly event as opposed to something that happens every chunk of time. And in Legion's case, it would be like 2 to 3 times a year that we'd actually end up seeing it. So this makes sense to decouple Mage Tower from that. So people who want to earn these different cosmetics and people who want to actually try out these challenges, if you're just starting out a new class and you just want to give it a shot on a new character, whatever it is, you can now do that whenever you want. So props to them for making this change.
Yeah, this is a great change. It's exactly what we wanted to see with this event. I mean, we said it many times on the show, just make it be available all the time. Even if you decouple it from the Time Walking schedule entirely, it's just a feature that's in the game forever. It's a shame we lost 3-4 months on it. But, obviously people are interested in this content. They like it. They like having the challenge available. A lot of people were in there when it was out in December. And the Time Walking rotation is super long. You don't get any character power benefit from doing Mage Tower at all. There's just nothing. So you don't really need to tie it to some kind of rotation where you don't want to be dishing out too much gear too early in a season or something like that. It can just be there, and it can be a thing that people can do. So it's a big win. I wish they had just done this at the time they brought it back, especially considering a lot of voices were saying this, when it was coming back, well, wait, are we going to be able to do this forever, or is it only when Legion Time Walking is up? And if it's only when Legion Time Walking is up, that's bad because of these reasons. But yeah, they looked at it and they listened to us and they said, okay, yeah, there's no reason not to have it available. It just enriches the game. So here we are. I'm glad to see it. It's a surprise, to be honest. I didn't expect to read this yesterday. I didn't think it was even on the radar. So very, very cool change. And I'm glad that people will be able to do the Mage Tower on their own schedule. If you're on vacation the week of Legion Time Walking, you just missed half of your chance to do it for the entire year. Yeah. Now it doesn't matter. If you feel like doing it, it's there. You can go check it out.
Well, and if you need to be able to put more time in than, an afternoon of runs to actually accomplish it, you were getting really close after that afternoon, but you just don't have time for the rest of the week or whatever it is. You then forget everything you've learned 5-6 months down the line by the next time it comes around. So I think it makes a lot more sense to keep it fresh in people's minds and let them just actually spend a weekend or spend actually getting this done. So that's great. Okay, hot fixes. They continue to do a whole bunch of tuning to tier sets and character classes and raid bosses. Just massive amounts of changes. So if you want to go check out the specifics to your class and your tier set, by all means, check out the hotfixes. The notes are linked in the show notes, so be sure to head on to startingzone.com and check out those show notes, and you can find out everything that's in there. But there's a few we want to highlight, one of which is actually something we brought up earlier in the show of Pokepok being a bit glitchy. Let's just leave it that way. They put in a hotfix that says Pokepok will now retain its advanced combat routines after using ancient translocators. In other words, once you've basically told Pokepok to be in aggressive stance or supportive stance, it doesn't then lose that entirely if you take a teleporter from one area of Zereth Mortis to the other. That's great. It's something that was frustrating.
It's big. I definitely noticed this. I think I noticed this before the blog was published because I prefer to leave Pokepok on a thing where it does what's it called, spin cycle, where it puts the bleed out.
Yeah.
Because I need some extra damage. I'm a tank. I don't do a lot of damage, but I can stand there and take a hit. So I need a little extra damage. And having to constantly micromanage Pokepok just eventually made it not worth my time. I don't want to micromanage Pokepok. I don't want to stop when I'm out of combat, talk to him, reset the modes, and do the whole thing. No, I don't want that. And so I just wouldn't do it. But now I get out there, I get set up, I turn on the thing, and then I don't have to think about it. It seems to be working pretty well. So glad to see that got fixed. That's one of the big complaints I had about the Pokepok feature to begin with.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, they then also went through the whole raid and tuned a ton of raid bosses, a whole bunch. They then went into M+, and tuned a bunch of M+, including Soleil's Gambit, doing a lot of reductions in there, and Streets of Wonder. And they continue to tune those, and I think they should continue to tune those, because I feel like Gambit's getting to where it should be. I think they've kind of started to hit the mark on that one. Streets of Wonder trash just still needs addressing. The trash is still just a little bit difficult. As far as items and rewards go, Sandworn Relics, you might know what these are. You might not know what these are. These are these purple obelisk style icon that sits inside your inventory that you loot from chests and all sorts of stuff around the area inside of Zereth Mortis. They increased the drop rate on these. They almost doubled them inside some cases from different sources. So rares, chests, daily quests, world bosses, so that you can actually... and they also actually made the tribute to the Elders chest actually give you 60 now, whereas it wasn't giving you any before. These can be used to buy up gear. This is kind of also... I'm pretty sure this is also the bind on account gear, right? This is the catch-up gear as well.
I don't know if it's BOA, but it is. Okay. I don't think it is, but it is item level 246. So this gets you right into normal raid. Basically, it's really good for vendor gear from what we're accustomed to. So the bar was really high though, because it was hard to get the relics, and then the pieces are expensive. So they're trying to smooth that out a little bit. Yeah, they're very expensive. I know that. I think I have enough to buy one piece right now after doing the weeks of farming that I've done so far. So yeah, it's definitely pricier gear, but yeah, they're making that more accessible for people to pick up and get stronger, which I think is great. But this also, to me, reinforces the, hey, why are main story questline rewards 226? Easy way to give everyone a couple pieces of 252 gear. I'm just saying. Cool piece, a weapon maybe. 252 weapon would be cool for the end of the thing. I'm okay. But yeah, if you're going to have so much gear in the zone, then just do, currency rewards or something, or bigger rep tokens or something. How about that for the quest chain? The 226 gear is just pointless. You're either coming in way above it, or you can easily get well past it just by spending a little bit of time versus the time gated quests that roll out over the course of a month and a half, right? Yeah, exactly. All right. The other thing that came in this past week, which unfortunately there isn't a retroactive fix for, is players who tell Ianara that they have been to Zereth Mortis before and have already met Pokepok. In other words, players who use the skip to skip the front half of the campaign inside Zereth Mortis now actually receive the proper amount of reputation that they would have earned had they done those quests. Before, players were using the skip and then weren't getting that reputation, so they were basically just giving up a huge amount of reputation. But they've now put in a fix that means if you actually do the skip, you do earn that reputation.
So I'm glad that went in, although it feels really bad for players who've already gone through this and done the skip. And there, from what I've seen, there isn't a sort of plan in place for how to resolve this for players who did already use the skip. It's just you're kind of, out of luck on that one. They were a little slow to catch up on this fix to me.
Yeah, although maybe it sets a good precedent for the future, is my hope.
Hopefully.
This change influenced me to get on my monk and go out and start Zereth Mortis. Because I kind of wanted to. I was like, well, the loop is not that long. Like I'm getting pretty well caught up on the warrior. Like I'm not spending that much time out there. And there's a lot of easy upgrades. The monk was sitting at like, I want to say 213 or so. I barely played the monk in season 2. It wasn't even caught up to season 2. So it's a huge power jump. But part of the thing was like, well, I don't want to miss out on all that rep. The rep is character specific. Like obviously there are some things that are like account bound once you reach the rep threshold or whatever, but there are certain things that you want, the rep on a specific character. So I just didn't do it because I was like, well, I'm not going to do the skip because I want the rep. It's like 2,000 rep almost. It's too lucrative to just give up on, but I don't really feel like doing that hour and change or whatever of questing to re-unlock all that stuff on another character. Right. And then I saw this change come in and I was like, well, I guess it's time to just, get the best of both worlds. And so that's what I ended up doing. It does stink for people that, did the skip earlier on. But the only thing I guess I would say about that is that, it was known what was happening there, I guess. Like you made the choice to forego the rep. So, but we haven't seen him do anything like this before that I can remember, right? Because we're used to the skips not giving you the rep that you would have gotten by completing the quest. So this is the first time that they've sort of baked all that in. And I guess my hope is even if, some people got caught and this sucks for them, that the next time they do this in 10.0, when we have a new long intro that provides you with some kind of rep currency, some kind of, power item like AP or anima or whatever it is that you might need, that they just bake that into the skip, that, you complete the skip quest and receive that reward at the time. Like, I think that is the design going forward. I mean, I have no complaints about the way it works right now. That was great. It was awesome to click a button, get my 1,975 rep, and go off to Zereth Mortis to start doing world quests. Like that was perfect on an alt.
Yeah. I can see how that would be attractive for sure, especially since that quest chain is a bit of a longer quest chain to dive into. So yeah. Okay, we've come to that time of the show where we want to dive into the second wing, the Cornerstone of Creation of Sopho. And so we're going to start off with Desagny, the Fallen Oracle. It says, dominated by the Jailer, Desagny leads the Mossworn in a battle to gain control of the Forge of Afterlives. The Jailer plans to use its power to unleash an eternity of torment upon all of reality. So that's not good. We want to stop that from happening. And this boss is...
That does seem less than ideal. Yeah, an eternity of torment on all of reality. I don't really like the sound of that. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, that's like 2020. We don't want that again. Okay, so as far as the room goes, it's a large circular room with pillars at different points around the room, and these pillars are used to spawn disintegration halos. At different points throughout the fight, the boss will shoot out a little black orb that travels to one of these pillars, and when it hits the pillar, it will spawn a ring that basically crosses the entire platform. It spawns out as an arc and crosses the entire platform to the other side. But Jason, before we dive too much into those mechanics, what about tanking this boss?
So tanking this boss is relatively simple. There's sort of bursty movement that's required when the halo is going to start from the room. It's like circular, and there's sort of these fonts, I guess, for lack of a more technical term, at like cardinal directions, more or less, right? Yep. And so the rings that you're talking about emanate from these fonts, and they kind of start at one particular font, and then they go in a pattern. So, when you identify where the halo is going to start from, you want to be close to that one, because the idea is basically you want your raid to get hit with the first.
Oh, we just lost Jason there for a second.
So I'm here. You want people to get that debuff quickly so that it has time to tick off before the next ring comes in. Because if you get hit with 2 rings inside of 5 seconds, you go boom. So it's important to, just direct traffic to that font that you need to be near for when the next halo comes out. The other thing that you need to worry about is infused strikes. The boss is going to put a debuff on tanks every time they get meleeed, called infused strikes. It inflicts cosmic damage. It's 20 seconds long, and when it expires, it casts Unleashed Infusion, and Unleashed Infusion deals an explosion of cosmic damage to all players, and that damage is increased by the number of stacks of infused strikes that just fell off. So tanks just need to keep an eye. You really want to be switching. I mean, around 6 stacks seems most of the time to be like the window you can get your stacks to fall off and then take them off your tank buddy. Sometimes if the boss is stuck in an animation or whatever, you can switch at 3, which is really nice because then you can keep that raid damage low. But yeah, you have to pay, like, the damage on you is not really that noticeable at first, so you do need to pay attention because you don't want that just like stacking up out of nowhere, and then you let 12 stacks expire and the whole raid takes a blast of damage. If you have boss mods and stuff, which you should, they're going to be yelling at you, but they'll yell at DBM will yell at you around 6 stacks, but if you could swap at 3, if you're clear, swap at 3, it's great.
Yeah, and there's also one ad that spawns, right? The Domination Core, this little ad that spawns and gets tanked.
Yeah, the ad, I believe it has like a standard aggro table. The boss will summon it, and it's a little robot thing that spins around near the boss. It'll be pretty close to the boss's location. It does have an interruptible cast, and it does poop out these void zones on the ground that you need to, kind of steer the raid away from. You probably want to try to keep... I mentioned the fonts, right? And there's like a cross formation on the floor. At various intervals in the fight, the boss is going to teleport to right in front of those fonts. So if you can, you kind of want to shift over to the side so you can keep the poop away from where the boss is going to set up and channel. So the positioning is important here, and the snap movement. Watch the taunt swap, but it's not like a punishing tank fight. The boss is not going to like stretch your tanking abilities from a damage, reduction standpoint. You just need to make sure that you are directing traffic appropriately and leaving lanes for your raid to do what they need to do.
Yeah, so the biggest thing to emphasize about this fight is it's very movement based. So yeah, being able to drop these puddles in a good spot means that you're leaving avenues up for players to move around. And as you said, when the boss does teleport, this boss actually teleports to one of these reservoirs when it reaches 0 mana and starts siphoning cosmic energy. And this creates a siphon barrier, and basically it's a barrier that absorbs 3% of our maximum health and damage, and at the same time is pulsing a large amount of damage to the entire raid group. So you want to have all your healing cooldowns set up for these siphon reservoir phases. So basically when Desagny teleports, everyone stacks up underneath of her, which is why you can't have dark puddles there, because it'd be very bad. And all the DPS just lay into her shield to try and break it as fast as possible, and all your healers just rotate through their healing cooldowns to keep everyone alive while this pulsing damage is taking place. But that is kind of like the patchwork part of this fight. The actual real beef of this fight is, in fact, dodging these rings. When these rings come out, as Jason mentioned, they will go to these different fonts or these towers that I described at the beginning, and it will sort of echo from one outwards, and then another one will spawn in. And you have these sort of ripples in a pond. If you threw 2 different stones in the pond, one after the other, the ripples are eventually going to collide with each other. And so what you need to do is eat one of them, get the debuff for having eaten one of them, and when that debuff expires, then eat the next one, which means there's a lot of running in the room to make sure you absorb one ring before to with enough time remaining for your debuff to drop for the next ring spawns. And more rings spawn throughout the fight. The first time this happens, you only get 1 ring, so you sort of go, hey, this is what the mechanic looks like. The second time and third time, and I think it's the second time, third time you get 2 rings, and then the 4th time, 5th time you get 3 rings and 4 rings. So it's a lot of dodge and manage these sorts of debuffs. And when you're getting 3 rings spawning in, one trick that a lot of people are doing is eating the first ring. You move close to where the first ring is, and then you use something like Soul Shape, or you use something like your Dora Shadows, those sorts of Covenant movement-based abilities, if you're not a Necrolord, to be able to avoid the other rings. So essentially, if you Soul Shape, for example, on 3 rings, you can stay inside Soul Shape form and just keep jumping over rings every single teleport if you want to do that. Now, you aren't going to be able to heal or do damage during that period of time. And there is a mythic level thing that we do where we actually skip multiple rings with one jump. If you position yourself properly where 2 rings overlap, you can jump 2 rings at the same time. That's the, more complicated than you need for LFR normal and heroic difficulty stuff. But it is something you can play around with if you want. Keep in mind that Door of Shadows,
especially if you get caught. Like if you get caught in a bad spot and there is no way to actually get that 5 seconds, then you can use displacement to buy yourself some time. So it can't, you shouldn't plan for it. I don't think, especially if you do step into LFR this week or you're working on lower difficulties, that shouldn't be your plan. But it is good to have those options. If you get caught, if you have a displacement, then you can displace through and. Yeah, you might lose uptime or whatever, but if you die, you're going to lose all your uptime. And you will die if you get hit with more than 1 ring in 5 seconds.
Yeah, and it's a great way to reduce the incoming damage just for healers to be able to manage things, right? Those dots do tick for a lot of damage. There's going to be a lot of damage during these phases. This is a phase where I often am tree-formed using Convoke to heal up the group while we're running around doing things because there's just so much damage coming in from this dot, and there's so much movement that most people can't plant and do something. Usually it's just when the halos are going out, which is what they're referred to because they're disintegration halos. When they're going out, your only goal is to live. It's to position yourself properly and live. So just focus on that during that part of the phase. Now there's one other mechanic that I want to highlight, and that is the staggering barrage. Basically this is a targeted spell cast on one player. You need players to put themselves between that player and the boss. The boss then fires off shots that go through those players and do damage to them. That's split based off the amount of people it hits. In LFR and normal, everyone just gets into this and just soaks the shots. It's minor damage when you have that many people in it. Nothing to worry about. On heroic and up, you actually have to split your group into 2 halves because the first group that soaks gets a debuff that makes them take 500% increased damage from Staggering Barrage for 45 seconds, which means that you have to have one group soak and then have another totally separate group that does not have the debuff soak. And if you get into that group and you have the debuff, you will die to the first shot that hits you. So definitely keep that in mind. This is also a great ability for people with immunities. If you have Turtle or Ice Block, be sure that you if you can make that vocal inside your normal raid team, that you're getting out of the group and ice blocking and no one's to soak it, then that's great. That means that everyone can then soak on your heroic difficulty in the next shot, and which just makes that really, really easy to manage. There's no way to control who's going to get targeted, but it is something that's helpful. So it's typically a range that is targeted or a healer. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, outside of that, the fight is pretty cool. I think it's a bit of like a math problem in your head is what it kind of feels like to me on mythic difficulty, as far as how you're skipping over certain rings and which rings you're skipping and where you're handling cooldowns where. But on lower difficulties, it's a pretty fun fight. Visually, it's really striking. This is another great room to use an Inky Black Potion in. If you haven't used the Inky Black Potions inside this raid yet, this is another great room to do that in. It looks very cool. I really dig it. But it's not a super complicated fight. It's just about positioning and movement. So always, just as long as your brain isn't in, I need to pump as many numbers as I possibly can, whether it's healing or damage. It's just in I need to live by moving and positioning properly. Then you'll kill this fight pretty easily. It's a great encounter.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good early boss, right? Like most teams are going to do this like probably third or something. The mechanics are pretty straightforward. You do get those windows to pump, right? Because you have when she's got the siphon barrier, you got to break that, and then when it breaks, it does even more damage to the boss. So that's you gotta break those quick. So you do get those windows where you can just pop everything and just lay into the boss, which is always fun to have. The mechanics are straightforward. They're easy to understand. The visuals are pretty clear. I think this is a fine fight for where it's positioned, which is like the first boss of a wing kind of thing. I guess one thing I would say, just to maybe save you a little bit of grief if you're working on it on heroic, is just make sure people are clear if they're the target of the barrage that they will be debuffed. So if you put somebody in like the even group and they're the first target, they are now not in the even group to soak the second barrage because they'll have their debuff from when they got targeted, right?
Yeah.
We had to do a little science with that. It was like, no, actually, yeah, you're debuffed. Don't get in there. You're going to explode. So, I really, as a raid leader, I always dislike fights where you have to like split the raid and certain groups need to do certain things at certain times. Like you need to split the raid fully in half or something. And then this side does this and the other side does this other thing. This one's not bad with that though. This one's relatively gentle. You can just split it right down the middle and say, okay, odds. So the first, barrage per phase evens soak the second, and, it'll all work out eventually. So yeah, it's definitely a cool fight. I think it should be pretty good on LFR too. Like it's not super complicated. I haven't done it on LFR. I'm not exactly sure if the rings just straight up will kill you the same way. Maybe that you have a little bit more wiggle room, but either way, I think it's a good start to this wing.
Yeah. All right, moving on. We got Prototype Pantheon. This is the first sort of council boss that you're going to fight in this raid. Bereft of the cosmic spirits of the Eternal Ones, these incomplete host bodies can only carry out their base directives without mercy or compassion. With the enemy at the gate, Lehuvium... sorry, this is not the right up. This is Lehuvium's thing.
No, Lehuvim is doing the RP at the beginning of this.
Really?
So you see Lehuvim
I actually missed that.
on the stage with because I guess Lehuvim's the thing that like builds the prototypes or whatever. So yeah, there's some RP with Lehuvim as you come into this room, sets up the Pantheon, and then runs back to Lehuvim's arena.
All the jerks always get in there before me, and I haven't seen this RP. This is terrible. Lehuvium has a little choice but to activate these dangerous prototypes. Okay, I got
What you're saying is you AFK on trash.
No, it's not. It's I'm killing trash and other people stealth ahead and then don't do trash. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
All right. Stage 1, War and Duty. Basically, you have two prototypes show up. If the prototype of War or prototype of Duty reaches 50% health remaining, both retreat the Progenitor Forge. So basically, this phase lasts until one of them reaches 50% health. Their health is not linked. You have to try and get both of them as close to 50% as possible before pushing them. But before we dive too deep into mechanics, this room is a large circular room. There are 4 different prototypes that spawn in. Each prototype has its own set of abilities. The first phase is fighting the War and Duty prototype. And then once you're done fighting the War and Duty prototype, you then fight the Sin and Seed prototype. And then in the last phase, you fight all 4 of them at the same time. And yes, throughout the entire fight, they all need to sort of die at the same time. So keep that in mind when you're doing damage. But Jason, what's tank stuff for this boss?
Well, I do believe that on lower difficulties, I think their health is linked at least above a certain percentage. I think when they get really low, it unlinks on normal, but it seems to be linked on normal. Either that or my guild is flawless at keeping them even, which is possible, but seems unlikely considering that we were trying to break it. But it does seem like they below 20% or something, they might split even on lower difficulties. So just something to keep in mind. Tank stuff is actually relatively straightforward here. This is obviously there's a lot going on in this fight, but tanks are not asked a lot of, in my opinion. When you're fighting War and Duty, War is going to be constantly spam casting. And it is interruptible. If you got a pally tank, pretty good to set that up on there for interrupt duty with Avengers. Just have some other people, some melee and range ready to help kick because the cast is nasty. You don't want it just going off unchecked the entire fight. Duty will put a stacking debuff on Duty's tank. It's called Humbling Strikes, and it basically doubles the damage from Humbling Strikes every stack, and it also does 30% splash damage to the entire raid as physical damage. So Humbling Strikes, you pretty much just want to swap every single one. It doesn't come in that often, so I think you could swap it off every single time. So just keep that in mind. I mean, if you get a second one or something, it's probably not the end of the world on lower difficulties. But you don't want this just stacking infinitely because of the raid splash. Once you get War and Duty to go away, then you have kind of a similar setup with Renewal and Absolution. Renewal is just going to be spamming Anima Bolt, which also leaves a dot behind. So you want to make sure that you're kicking that with regularity. Absolution, which is the Denathrius type of prototype, does Racking Pain, which you might remember if you did Nathria. It's that like red cone attack that he does. It will track you, so the active tank cannot get out of it, but does need to point it away from the group, and then you switch. Yep. So yeah, I mean that pretty much just persists throughout each of these phases. You're basically going to have an interrupt target that you want to just dedicate interrupts to and make sure it's not free casting, and then You're going to have a melee boss that your tanks are going to swap per stack.
Yeah. As far as phase 1 goes for this boss with War and Duty, you basically are going to be starting off DPSing these two bosses. The bosses are going to spawn a set of adds. These adds, you are then going to go and DPS. You basically have to split your raid up into groups to make sure they all die quickly is the biggest thing. You don't want to end up in a situation where these adds live too long. And that's because they are slowly filling the room with, and actually, I just described the Gambit's first boss. It's a very similar mechanic. The room slowly fills up with a floor that you can't stand in because it does damage to you, and it will continue to fill up that way until you kill all these adds. So you want to be sure that all of these adds die. You will then also have a winds that pushes you back, as well as a swirlies you need to dodge. So you need to be sure that during this phase, you are killing these adds off before you hit the part of the fight where the bosses start casting winds that push you backwards, that you have to run against and dodge swirlies on the ground. Those are the two chief mechanics that you're dealing with during this phase, the windswept wings, the pinned mechanic. Yeah, if you get hit by the swirlies, it pins you, which you then have to, free the person, destroy the thing, free the person, and they take a bleed over time. It's very bad. So be sure that you're dodging the swirlies because you don't have to deal with breaking these people out of this mechanic. And there's also gloom bolts that are going on that Jason talked about, which hit a random target and they absorb healing received on that target. So you have to actually heal up the targets that get gloom bolts so that you can keep them alive during these phases. When both bosses get to 50%, hopefully at the same time, that would be ideal. You don't want one to be at like 67% and the other one at 50 because you have to actually kill these bosses later in the fight. So you want them both to be at like 51 and then you knock one down to 50 as the other one's kind of dropping down to 50. That's your ideal situation if you can. You have a couple of percentage points of leeway, obviously on earlier difficulties where you don't have to worry about this quite as much. But as Jason said, if they're linked health, which they probably will be on LFR, I imagine they'll all be linked health on LFR. DPS the boss is 50%, go into the next phase. Next phase starts. These two prototypes leave, two more come in, the Sin and Seed. The Sin and Seed are an interesting combo. So you have Withering Seeds that are going to spawn throughout the room. These are 4 seeds that typically spawn, and when you heal these seeds to full, Invigorating Bloom happens. And this means that you basically get additional healing done to all players, increased by 50% for 30 seconds, and this affects stacks, which means that what you want to do is always have this buff on everyone and be increasing throughout the fight. And when it actually reaches full health, it heals everyone, not fully, but for a large amount. So just keep in mind that these Invigorating Blooms you kind of want to trigger at certain times throughout the fight. And the other thing to keep in mind is Withering Nova takes place from these seeds. So if the seeds die, if they wither, if they actually go to 0 health, they're slowly decaying over time. It unleashes a wave that does a huge amount of nature damage every 2 seconds for 16 seconds, and that affects stacks as well. So your healers during this phase will need some way of tracking these Withering Seeds. Unfortunately, there isn't a base UI element that makes this super easy to do. You basically have to sort of like click around to the different seeds or turn on friendly nameplates to be able to see the health bars for these seeds to keep them alive. This is one of those mechanics in a boss fight where I feel like Blizzard could improve on their base UI to make this easier to handle. Either adding them as friendlies to your raid frames would be great if they chose to do it that way, or having a separate frame that pops up for special targets, and that be something that you can actually have. I think would be both great improvements that they could do to the game when it comes to seeds like this and mechanics like this. But yes, if you're healers, your job is to keep these different sort of Withering Seeds healthy and to top them off at certain times throughout the fight to activate this healing bonus on all players, and then maintain this healing bonus on all players, because you're going to be taking a whole bunch of damage in this. On top of the seeds, the prototype of Renewal also casts Stampede. And Stampede are little soul-shaped animals that run in a straight line all the way across the room. And to describe this, it's one single file row that travels from one side of the room to the other in a straight line, and it will do that for the remainder of the phase. And then another row will spawn, and another row will spawn. So you're almost sectioning off, you're cutting the pie into slices, if you will, with these rows of soul-shaped animals. And if you get hit by these animals, they will knock you back and do damage to you. And there's some pretty ridiculous stuff that can happen with these knockbacks, because before you land, you can hit by another one and hit by another one, and you can basically get carried off of the platform if you're not careful where you're standing. So you want to be paying attention to where these are coming in. And I will also say that their sort of radius is slightly larger than their model. So don't have one running like just behind you, because you might just get bumped and knock forward, as different animals have different soul shapes, have different sizes. So like a snake is going to be not as big as, you know, a turtle or something that's walking along, kind of idea. That's something to keep in mind. So just be sure you give them a little bit of room to move around. Okay, Jason, you want to go over the prototype of Absolution? This
is probably the nastiest part of this fight, especially if you have a bigger group. Which you will on LFR, although I'd imagine it's slightly more forgiving on that difficulty. But the big thing about Absolution, which again, if you did Denathrius in Castle Nathria, you probably remember Hand of Destruction, which is where the prototype will put an image out on the ground right at its location. It'll pull everybody to that image, and then you have 6 seconds to get out of the radius. Otherwise, you take essentially fatal damage, and if you get out of it, there's fall off damage based on how far away that you are from that detonation point. So you want to kind of set that up and have some kind of clear instruction of where people are supposed to go, because that comes out, and then immediately afterwards is Sinful Projection, which shoots out these basically blobs in 4 directions from each player. They do shadow damage, they stun you for 2 seconds, and they also apply the stacking Burden of Sin debuff that the boss applies with its abilities. So that can add up in a hurry. If somebody eats a whole bunch of Sinful Projections because of bad positioning, it can be a real problem. What we find works the best with a big group is to just designate a location we're all going to stack to, a player to stack with. You just follow that mark out to the spot where they're going to set up, stand there. If everybody does it right, then all the Sinful Projections will go away from everybody. Everybody needs to hold still for like a second as they shoot away, and then you keep going. If you have a smaller group, or if certain people just can't, they don't have the wherewithal or the movement to be able to stick with the group, then as long as they get way away and don't point these directly at the group, then it's avoidable. They don't move super fast, but the stun is the problem here, because it doesn't matter if they're moving slow if you can't move at all, right? They're moving faster than you. So that is probably like the nastiest part of this whole fight, I think. There's a lot of mechanics here, but they're all pretty simple. Like, obviously, if you make a mistake with Runecarver's Death Touch, you're just going to die, and that's bad, but you learn from that mistake pretty fast, I feel like. Hand of Destruction, Sinful Projection is really chaotic, and if you don't do it right, it is going to result in potentially many deaths. But that's literally everything that happens in this fight. So it's all very predictable. There are some bad overlaps, but they're coming, so you can kind of plan accordingly.
Yep. Now we move into the last phase, the Stage 3 Pantheon of Death. So this, of course, happens once you've gotten the Stage 2 Pantheon prototypes down to being 50% hit points, or the first one to get to 50% hit points transitions you. Okay. Basically, this is the fight that we talked about with Anduin, where I like when they build over the span of an encounter. So you learn phase 1, you learn phase 2, and then phase 3 is just phase 1 and phase 2. You basically still have the Necrotic Ritual, the Runecarver's Death Touch, the Gloom Bolts. You have the Pinning Volley with the Windswept Wings pushing you back. You have to dodge the swirlies. You have the Wild Stampede going on. The seeds are back, and they're just as important for healing them a certain way to actually, keep your healing up. You have an Anima Storm taking place. You got the Hand of Destruction still happening, yanking you around. The Sinful Projections are happening, and the Racking Pains are happening. So it's definitely one of those key factors where this phase is a combination of the first 2 phases, and it is your heroism and burn as hard as you can. Stack them all up. Use all your AoEs to just burn into them. A lot of the phase 2 and phase 3 rides on the back of your healers, getting those seeds topped off, keeping them topped off, and getting the buffs out on your group. So keep that in mind about that. That's going to be what keeps you alive through the amount of mechanics and damage that's taking place in this phase, with the room obviously being more and more restricted, with you getting yanked around and having to dodge stuff and being pushed back. And there's a lot going on in this phase, but it's a very short phase, because you just have to do 50% damage to all of the bosses. And with heroism up and them all stacked, they're going to drop pretty quickly. So the biggest thing is just keeping in mind they need to all die close together. They have to die within 20 seconds of each other, something like that. So you want to be sure that you are killing these ads off very close together so that they all die at the same time. Yeah, cool fight.
Yep, that's the big pressure there. It's less pronounced on lower difficulties. I don't think that complete reconstruction even happens on normal. I haven't really seen it, but normally their health is so low that they die pretty quickly together. But I mean, according to the journal, it's only heroic and up. But I don't feel like it's a normal mechanic, and it's certainly not an LFR mechanic. So if you're stepping into lower difficulties, you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, council fights are rarely fights I enjoy. I think this one is actually pretty well executed, though. Each of the phases feels pretty fair. It's kind of fun to see, all four of the Covenant leaders kind of represented in this way, and then you fight these prototypes of them all at the same time in the last phase. Not crazy about the Anima Storm. That's the one thing I really don't like in this fight. It's pretty subtle. It's hard to see. Night Fae blue magic on the ground is usually a good thing. And going back to Eternal Palace, like magic tornadoes interrupting what I'm trying to do are not my preferred mechanics of choice. But other than that, it's a good fight. It's got a little something for everybody to do and for different roles to feel like they have like a cool moment to, contribute to the fight. If we have to have council fights, then they might as well be like this one. I think this is a good one.
Yeah. Okay, the last boss of this wing is Lahuvium, the principal architect. With meticulous care, Lahuvium weaves ephemera into being in accordance with the hallowed will of the first ones. Now this process is threatened as Mossworn forces seek to claim this power. Basically, he's a robot that makes more robots. This is the concept of basically the end of the world. So Jason, we want to go over some tank mechanics for Lahuvium?
Yeah, tank mechanics are not, they're not really going to test you very much, but you do need to move around a whole bunch because you're going to get a deconstructing energy on the active tank every so often, which puts a circle around you. The circle does some damage until it expires. Once it expires, it results in a deconstructing blast, which does damage. It increases physical damage taken. And the good thing is that it cleans up any of the unstable motes that you manage to get in that 6-yard or 8-yard circle around you. So basically, you'll have the two tanks can pretty much, you want to, I think in general, pull the boss over to whichever forge that you're going to try to kill first in the intermission phase. So you want to kind of set up against one of those images of the automa. And then you direct your raid to drop their unstable motes at a certain location. The active tank is going to get deconstructing energy, and one other player will. It seems like on all raid sizes. I've done this with slightly smaller groups and pretty big groups. It seems like it's always 2 people get deconstructing energy. Just watch out for each other. Don't overlap each other, but do overlap as many motes as you can. And then that tank needs to be not taking melee hits for 12 seconds. The next tank will receive the next deconstructing energy. You just kind of rotate. So. Pretty simple swap. It does require a little bit of snap movement. You don't have depending on where your raid is going with the motes, you may not have a whole lot of time to set up and clear some of them. So, but overall pretty simple. This isn't a boss that's going to routinely punish your tank from what I've experienced.
This is the boss that in the first week I was like, is this really a boss? Because it was so easy to knock through, and then they buffed it a bunch to make it actually more challenging. And then we had weird things happening with different ads spawning that were supposed to spawn. So the fundamentals of this boss is it's a large room with different sort of pocket generating areas where they build robots. There's different robot bays. Let's use some mech warrior terminology here. There's some different bays where these robots are built, and there's going to be different constructs that are built inside those areas, and they all do different things. And so we'll go through them. Basically, we have the degeneration automa, which basically it inscribes the target with protoform energy, inflicting cosmic damage every 0.5 seconds for 15 seconds. It has the acquisitions automa. This one fixates on a target, and basically it does damage to all players and cosmic damage is increased by 20%, and it detonates upon death, which knocks everyone backwards very, very far, like 40-yard knockback. It's a huge knockback. And then the Guardian Atoma, where it basically has Sentry Fire that periodically unleashes a barrage of energy at random targets, and it also creates this Sentry every 30 seconds. And then we have, on Heroic difficulty enough, the Defense Matrix Atoma, which creates a shield that reduces damage taken to all Atoma in the area by 50%. So these are the primary three that you'll see, obviously, Degeneration, Acquisition, and Guardian. And then on Heroic, you'll see the Defense. And the Defense is probably the least dangerous of them, but it's the first one you have to kill because it's reducing the damage everything else takes. On normal LFR and I guess even Heroic even, we always kill the Acquisitions Atoma first. It fixates on a player and runs towards them. If you can kill that one basically while it's spawning. So when the boss actually starts doing this synthesized Atoma, you can go into these bays and start DPSing one and kill it before it even spawns. And so you find the one that looks like a rock elemental, the earth elemental that shamans summon in, and you beat it up until it's dead before it even spawns in. And if you don't kill it before it spawns, it will spawn at full health, so just keep that in mind. You want to kill it while it's forming, which means you use some DPS cooldowns here to kill this thing as it's forming. And then it's gone. You don't have to deal with it, which is great. Sometimes now we're seeing two of them spawn, which I don't know if is intended, but it shouldn't be.
I think that's the third time.
The third time
it's sort of like do or die. Like the first time you get one acquisitions, or the acquisitions with the big knockback. It's called.
Yeah.
You get one the first time, and then it rotates in the room somewhere, and you get a second one, and then the third time you get two of them. But keep in mind that the boss, I believe, does take full damage while it's synthesizing.
Yeah.
So if it's low enough, you can just call it a burn and, just kind of kite the ads if they end up popping up, or kill it before they even get that far. But yeah, the acquisitions one is so disruptive. It's so hard to deal with that if you can just make it not exist, that is preferable. Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind here is that knockback can knock you into other mechanics. So it's not just disruptive in a, it's chasing someone kind of way, but it's also disruptive and it can knock you back into bombs, which then detonate, which then hurt and denies more space, and it's very bad. So yeah, kill it before then, or you can CC them. This is the other thing. If you can't kill it before it spawns, like for example, the third time around when you get two of them, just blind one with a rogue or frost trap it or root it or whatever it is off to the side. It will be affected by CCs for a certain period of time. So you can do that and buy yourself some time, right? If you're like, hey, boss is at 10%, we're going to kill boss, just send someone over to CC it once and then bring them back over to DPS boss and just leave that thing trapped over in the side of the room and kill off the boss. Okay, outside of that, you've described the front half of this really well. When it came to these moats, they get on players then have to spread out. They drop down bombs. The bombs, the moment they drop, become active, which means that basically as your timer on your debuff is counting from 1 to 0, you want to start moving away from where you are. Like you start moving, you don't wait until you see the animation on your screen. From 1 to 0, you start moving away from where you are, and it will drop this mine on the ground, and it will not spawn a puddle underneath of it. If you actually trigger it, if you stay there too long, or if someone gets knocked back into it, or someone walks over it, it will then spawn this big yellow puddle on the ground, and that yellow puddle is permanent through the rest of the fight, which denies space in the room. So where you're placing these is really important, because if you want to get into these sort of like bays where these things are spawning and DPS them down, you don't want to create a wall in front of them that no one can walk through, right? So keep in mind, the room itself is like a horseshoe shape. As far as the spawning bays, there's the entrance right at the very base of the horseshoe, and then there's several bays on either side of it, and at the very back of the room, it's just a big open space at the back of the room. So if you want a really good spot to drop a bunch of bombs, you have a big open space at the back of the room. Feel free to start to actually pull the boss from that area. So the first couple waves of bombs you spawn all spawn in that area. And then as these Atoma start spawning inside the bays, you can sort of see them lined up as to which ones are going to be built there. They're queued, if you will. You can then, as a tank, decide where you want to move the boss so you can burn that Atoma down quickly. Just keeping in mind what's going on with that. I think we covered everything. I think that there's not a lot to this.
Well, on LFR, there's really not much else. But on normal and up, you will get Cosmic Shift every so often during main phase.
Right.
And that's a pretty big knockback. And you obviously have areas that you're trying to avoid. So you got to make sure, Manifest Mode's going to come out. It's going to hit a bunch of people. Those people need to have some kind of direction as to where your team wants those motes to drop. And they need to give each other enough space to drop their motes and then get back in the group without, running through a mote that somebody dropped in front of them, for example, or off to their side. They have to space out a little bit and just be conscientious when they run back through. Early on, area denial is not that big of a problem because the area is pretty big, like you mentioned. So, I think the acquisitions automa is usually on the far right to start with, like the right end of that horseshoe. And so what I normally do is I'll have people go essentially counterclockwise to drop their manifest motes, and then typically we rotate clockwise to the next bay because that's where the next acquisitions automa is. So we're always kind of dropping them counterclockwise and moving clockwise around the room, which helps. But you do have to make sure that people are positioned smartly for Cosmic Shift if you're doing normal and up, because if you get knocked into a giant pile of unstable motes and all of the area of effect on the ground, that is going to cause you more area denial problems. It could cause deaths. It's just, people need to drop their motes off to the side, get back in the group and make sure their back is safe, get knocked towards the center of the room, away from where the motes are off to your side. And you can really kind of minimize the area denial effect of this fight. Because if you have a good plan, you're always just moving away from where you're dropping stuff and you have plenty of room. So, it's a pretty cool fight. I do like the fact that you do have the burn option because the boss does take full damage when it's synthesizing. You can get some extra damage in that phase if possible. And there are spots where, if you have 2 acquisitions automa coming up and the boss is in execute range, it's probably time to just burn because you have a fair bit of time there where nothing's happening. The ads are being synthesized. There's nothing out yet. And the boss is there. If it's in kill shot range, you might as well just kill it, So I like having that option. And I think it's going to become, as we get power spikes from double legendary, from 4-set, from item level, it's going to become more and more attractive and just speed this fight up. This is a really cool fight visually. The spell effects look great. All, the unstable motes are cool looking. It's fun. I mean, I don't know if we talked about Protoform Cascade, but that's a pretty simple mechanic to avoid. It's where, a wave of these fractals appear around the boss, like a spiral of them, and then they drop some swirls on the ground. So you either got to be really hugged up on it in melee or, a good 8-10 yards back.
Yeah, it's a mid-range attack. Yeah. Yeah,
it's a little weird, but it's pretty easy to dodge, and it doesn't leave any terrible after effects on the ground or anything. You either want to be right inside the boss's model if you're melee, or you want to be a good couple steps back if you're ranged.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, really, really cool looking arena. This is really thematically a cool fight. The whole lead up to the place, you see these kind of automa and these weird sort of humanoid robot things being assembled in here, and really, really cool arena, pretty cool fight, but they're pretty accessible. I mean, I think all these fights that we're talking about today, these are not really super challenging fights. These fights are there for you to go have a good time with and get some loot out of. And Lahuvum drops tier gloves.
Yeah, so I was gonna say another tier piece this week.
Yeah, that's really attractive. Cool fight. I mean, I really have. I have no complaints about this. It's like an A-B type fight. I usually kind of like those because you just learn everything you need to know pretty early on, because you're just rotating between kind of 2 different concepts. It's not like a thing where, some new wrinkle gets thrown in 8 minutes deep. So those are always good fights to learn. And again, not much for tanks to do, but I'm kind of used to that. There are a couple of fights that punish tanks more heavily. This isn't really one of them, but you have to keep your head on a swivel. You're directing a lot of traffic here. You have to move in a tight window repeatedly, and you got to make sure that the raid is set up to succeed as far as dropping motes, taking knockbacks, and you have to get into position. I don't know if we specified this. I don't think this is an issue on LFR, but when Synthesize is going out, there is
a ring you have to stand in. Yeah,
there's Protoform Radiance, which does a lot of damage. Even on normal, this will straight up kill you if you're not positioned right. I don't think this is as much of an issue on LFR, though. I've obviously haven't done this on LFR yet, and I may never. But that the idea is that there is raid-wide damage going out during synthesize, so you can't just hang out like wherever you want to necessarily.
I think the goal is that you don't stand in the middle of the room DPSing the boss the whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It forces you into one of the bays, is what happens.
Yeah, it will stack up and kill you for sure. But yeah. You'll see like a big twirly arc right in front of the bays where the automa are, and if you get in there, it reduces your damage taken by 50%. So, even on normal, like this can be punishing for sure. So you want to be nearby the next thing that you're going to kill, which is going to be an acquisitions automa probably. So you want to know where that is. You want to set the raid up in front of it, and you want to make sure that everybody is ready to dip into that arc once synthesis starts. So you do that, and you're in good shape. This is a very satisfying kill.
Yes, this is probably the thing I love the most about this boss is it's going to just get easier and easier as gear scales. It's not one of those fights that is 6 minutes long and remains 6 minutes long through the entire because of phases and
scripting
whatever.
And, yeah.
Exactly. It is, and it's not one that's going to get, oh, well, when we do more damage, this fight then gets more complicated because we're now killing things too quickly. It's not one of those fights. So
right, like now the overlap happens at a bad time.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
Right. There's not going to be a lot of relearning. You just burn it faster. Yeah.
Exactly. So I love it when encounters scale well with player power. So that makes me very happy. All right, with that, we're going to play a quick sounder for our patrons, and we'll be right back. Hi everyone, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Celian, Greg, Kapawi, Nibble the Mighty, and Shorel. Thank you. This sounder is for you. Our Patreon is located over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. We have no new patrons this week to report, but we do have a patron event happening this Friday. This Friday evening, we will do the patron Q&A episode. So if you have questions you want to submit through our Patreon site as a patron, or head into our Discord and submit them there, feel free to do so, and we will be sure they make it onto the show. If you want to participate live, you can do that on Friday night. We'll get going around 8:30 Eastern. We usually wait a few minutes, give or take, just to see if people actually pop into the channel. There's a waiting room channel that if you're a patron, you can see. And so you pop into that channel and we'll drag you in and you can chat with us, can ask us questions and whatnot, if that's something you're interested in. But this week, this month, I guess, we just really want to know what you guys think so far about the new raid, the new content, the new season, everything that's going on World of Warcraft wise. So we'll sort of give our little recap of how we feel so far on that Friday night. But you guys can give us your little recap of how you feel so far about things. And that'd be great if you want to submit those. If you're not playing the game very much, if you're like an Elden Ring person who's, that's what you want to play right now, then cool. That's fine too. But we're happy to chat about whatever. So patrons, thank you very much for all your support. Always appreciate it. It means a lot to us. Helps keep the show running. And we are looking forward to chatting with you on Friday.
Absolutely. Thanks, patrons, for making the bonus shows possible. And yeah, it should be a fun one. It's also going to be our last patron episode before expansion reveal. So I wouldn't be surprised if people want to talk about that. I have nothing to impart. I don't know anything I'm not supposed to know. I also don't have any idea what they're going to be doing. It is a closed book to me. Yeah. Who knows where they go? They could do anything from this point. They have to do a lot. So we'll see how that works. But I would imagine that's going to be top of mind for a lot of people because we're only a few weeks away from that big expansion reveal at this point. So exciting times, as we get deeper into, the features of 9.2 finally unlocking and people get more experience with the end game content and that expansion on the horizon. So, I think it's shaping up to be a pretty good year for WoW. Yeah.
If you folks have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, consider heading on over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. Those reviews really help out our show, and we love reading them here from our listeners. This one comes in from Beavers in the U.S., entitled Long Time Coming. It says, for some reason, Jason predicting the exact day of 9.2 reminded me to give this podcast a 5-star review after 4 years of listening. Good stuff, boys. Well, thank you very much, Beavers. And thank you, Jason, for getting us that 5-star review by correctly predicting that day.
There you go. Yep. My instincts are honed.
That's right.
And it feels like ancient history now that we're a little backed up on 5 stars because it's like, this patch has been out for a month now. But yeah, there are hiccups, obviously, but the prod schedule is kind of predictable, right? Like I also mentioned that I would expect that the expansion announcement would be shortly after LFR rolled all the way out, right?
Yep.
And that kind of proved out. So,
Yep.
Obviously COVID threw a wrench into everything, and WoW's a hard game to make. But once the machine starts rolling, there are some patterns that emerge. So, we got good stuff happening. We got good stuff to look forward to. I mean, I think actually the thing that I am enjoying the most right now is I feel like I can invest exactly the amount of time I want in the game and still get rewarded for it. I'm not playing more than I want to. I don't wish that I could do more stuff than I'm doing, or I'm not getting enough rewards for the time I'm spending. So it's a nice balance that they've struck here. I think for invested players, I think actually it's panning out really well. I think if you're not invested, it's probably not grabbing you. But if you've been playing, it's like this is a nice balance. There's enough stuff to do to keep you busy, but you're not feeling stretched.
Yeah. I hit that point last week where once I got both my trinkets, and I completely capped my vault at that point. I was like, okay, I can do some fight research here and there, but otherwise, like, I'm good to go do something else if I want to go do something else. This feels good. I like getting back to that point of logging in, spending 40 minutes doing daily quests, and then whatever it is I want to do. If I want to do Trialstyle, I went and did Trialstyle. I was like, cool, here we go. I can do this. If I wanted to farm up mount stuff for crafting mounts, I can go and do that inside Zereth Mortis if I want to fly around, open up treasures, or do more PvP just for raiding as opposed to doing it for, honor to cap my vault. Like it felt good. So yeah, I like that we're getting back to that point for sure.
And you'll have Mage Tower in the mix starting next week too.
I know.
So I think that's the beauty part. It's like you actually, if you're invested, you can do the stuff that feels like it quote unquote matters, but then you also have the flexibility to maybe spend a day, an afternoon or whatever working on Mage Tower. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 510 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, reach out to us on Twitter, or join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/Discord. We'll get you into that channel. And if you want to get your hands on some TSC gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. You can check out all the sweet designs we have on shirts and mugs and stickers and masks and all sorts of stuff like that. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is always over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. Always talking about whatever I'm getting into around WoW and other stuff. So come over there and say hi.
Nice. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.